समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Welcome to the Worldview with Swasti. As the Iran-US war has been unfolding in the most asymmetric and complex manner, I'd say a convoluted manner, where successful military campaigns by the US in the last 3 months have not really been able to put a coherent strategic outcome in place. But in the middle of that equation, there is another equation, one between Israel and Lebanon, which is focused on eliminating Iran's proxy, Hezbollah. Now, while the roots of it go deeper into the 1982 Lebanese civil war, etc., but more recently, if you remember, Mossad stunned the world with carrying out a sophisticated covert operation that eliminated Hezbollah operatives and their leadership in 2024. And since there has been an intermittent war that keeps erupting every now and then. And now that war has been drawn into the larger US-Iran war of 2026. And here, I mean the Operation Epic Fury and Rising Lion. Now, within 3 months, a decisive outcome or a deal between the US and Iran still remains elusive. But Israel's military campaign against South Lebanon and Hezbollah shows no signs of receding. Now, to understand the latest developments therein, the role of US as a broker between Israel and Lebanon, and the impact of this war on upcoming general elections in Israel in autumn, which is a few months from now, I'm pleased to be joined by Lieutenant Colonel Amos Davidowitz. He's in the reserve of the Israeli Defense Force and has served in numerous combat commands, including this war, the fourth he has fought in, and served since 2023 on both the northern and the southern fronts. Apart from his military role, Amos is also a widely traveled scholar and speaker, and he also talks on the humanitarian aspects of war and has been involved in the track 2 diplomacy in the region as well. Needless to say, he can give us a 360-degree view of the subject at hand. So without further ado, let me welcome Amos to Worldview with Swasti, and I'm happy that this is his first media outing in India. So Amos, you heard the introduction, and you, of course, you have a sense that audiences in India do have a hang of just how complex the entire situation is. But let's just begin from what is going on right now. What is the situation like?
The situation right now, so Israel is fighting a war on several different fronts. Right? And so there's what's going on in Lebanon, and then there's what's going on in Gaza, and then there's what's going on with the Houthis, and what's going on with the Iranians, and what's going on in the media, which is a very, very important and strategic front in this war, much more than any other war that we have fought, also because of the amount of time that it's taking. But the situation, and you're specifically asking about Lebanon. So I would correct you and say Israel is not carrying out a war against southern Lebanon. Israel is carrying out a war against the Hezbollah, who happens to be positioned in southern Lebanon and also in northern Lebanon. And so right now, the situation is that there's a very, very shaky ceasefire, just like the ceasefire between the United States and Iran, where everybody says there's a ceasefire and everybody's shooting. So it's not really a ceasefire. Something else that you mentioned in your introduction, when you said that even though there's a clear military victory on the side of the United States, that is not translated into the political gains that you would expect if we look at the Machiavellian approach of war is just another part of politics. And the reason for that is that the United States and Iran and Israel and Hezbollah are working in two parallel worlds, and there is a difference between the way they understand the world and the way we understand the world, what the end game is, and what prices people are willing to pay. It's completely different. And therefore, you can have the situation right now, as you have in the States, with Iran and the United States, and each side claims victory because each side sees it as victory. It's not manipulation; they just have a different worldview. Right? So, I don't know that much about Indian culture, and I don't know that much about Hinduism and Buddhism. I read a lot more about Buddhism than I did Hinduism, but I also read a lot about Hinduism. It was really hard for me to get through the whole Bhagavad Gita. I gave up at some point along the way. But the way let's say the modern state of India and the way the modern state of Israel sees that one of the issues, the main issue of the existence of the state is providing security and safety for its population. That's what it's there for. Okay, taking into consideration the political mechanism and corruption and so on. But basically, what the common agreement of the whole of the society is that what we want, the state's job is to take care of us, right? To create an environment that you and I will be able to interact, do business together, build a community together, and we will have a framework that protects us. And this is not the situation with the Hezbollah, nor the situation with Iran. What focuses their understanding is something called the Makawama, or the resistance, which and their approach is theological.
Okay.
And so let's say in this case, Trump is a businessman and he thinks of it as a transaction. But Khamenei isn't. He's not a businessman. He's a theologian. And the leader of each of these groups is a religious person who thinks in theological terms, which is completely different.
Yes. No, I mean, that is an interesting point to always remember because, you have a very rational cost-benefit analysis coming from a very Western approach of how Americans look at it versus the theological approach that you just mentioned. And I think that's an important distinction to bear in mind. And thanks for sort of underscoring the fact that everybody is just interpreting it as their version of victory. Coming just a little bit again back to the question of Hezbollah, Amos, help us understand that ever since, especially in the recent times, in the recent 2-3 years, I also mentioned the Mossad operation, etc. But in the recent years, there has been, this ongoing campaign to eliminate and weaken the Hezbollah. And yet you see that this is going on and we do not know when this is going to stop. So just what is your understanding on what really is the military preparedness of Hezbollah, especially, and to what extent do you think that Iran is able to or not able to support that axis and proxy in the same manner that it has done for all these decades?
Okay, I don't want to disappoint you, but there is nothing that can be looked at its own at a microscopic point. In Lebanon, I held weapons that came from Russia, that came from North Korea, that came from Iran, that came from China, besides the locally produced stuff, and besides Western stuff, which you can buy on the international market. So what's happening in Lebanon and with the Hezbollah as a proxy of Iran is part of a much greater story, which actually has tremendous effect on India. Tremendous effect on India. Because the question is, if you look at the bigger picture, the question is, where is going to go that trade route and the route of the energy and transportation? Is it going to go through India, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Europe, or it's going to go China, Iran, Russia, Europe? With this, we're talking about trillions of dollars, or many trillions of dollars. And so this is all part of that also. And it cannot be, because somebody has to fund Hezbollah. And if Hezbollah has all the weapons that it has, which it has numerous, endless amounts of weapons. We brought out whole convoys of weapons out of Lebanon. So somebody has to buy that. Somebody has to pay for it. Hezbollah produces one thing only: drugs. It used to produce heroin, now it produces Captagon, and produces drugs. That's one way to fund things. But besides that, it produces nothing.
So who buys these drugs? You're saying that Hezbollah produces only one thing, which is drugs. So you are also referring to a kind of a shadow economy, which is,
Of course.
based on drugs, etc. So please help us understand. We are trying to get a better understanding of what are the sources of revenue for Hezbollah. Let's just start with the drugs.
Drugs is one, Iran is the second, and Iran gets money from its oil and so on and so forth. And there's also other individuals or countries that give that either donate money. Some of it, I would say, benevolently. In other words, there's poor people somewhere, and they want to help the poor people, and they don't really go into the details of it, and they're more than happy to help. I wouldn't. Some people in the press and so on call them useful idiots. I wouldn't call them idiots. I think that these are people with good intentions. There are people with good intentions, and they would like to alleviate suffering. But there's a reason why the people are poor. There's something that's going on there that created a system that created that. And so, so one of the things, as I said, is going to be drugs. One of the things is going to be intentional money that comes from various foreign actors, and that's basically where their revenue comes from. They don't produce anything besides that. The Captagon used to be produced in Syria, and then it moved into Lebanon. On the 7th of October, when I went down south, the Hamas terrorists, we found tremendous amounts of Captagon on them, in the packs and so on and so forth, because it's kind of like a stimulant in it. So. Who uses it? I assume that, again, I don't know that much about Indian society, but I'm sure that people who use narcotics in India, and they use them in Europe, and they use them in the West, and they use them in South America, and they use them all over the world. Drugs is a very big issue.
Right. And interesting that you mentioned that following the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel, and you were pretty much a part of, the Israeli response then. And also, Amos, you're joining us from kibbutz, right? And kibbutz was one of the centers which was attacked. And that is the background to what you're telling me. There's also one thing that I'd like to understand from you better, which is that lately we also see that the Lebanese government has gone on, at least officially, trying to distance itself from Hezbollah and trying to say that we do not want to support it. However, of course, anybody that understands that region, even remotely, would say that Hezbollah is far too entrenched into the Lebanese society. What has been your experience of this? I mean, are they really that invisible, or is it just easier to sort of target their nodes of power and eliminate them? Because that's precisely what the Israeli strategy has been like, isn't it?
Okay, so to give a response to this, I have to go back a little bit in history. You as an Indian audience, you're very much aware of what happened when the colonial powers left. Everywhere the colonial powers left, what they left was a mess. Why? Because they did divide and rule, right? So India gets split, and Korea gets split, and Vietnam gets split, and Cyprus gets split, and our society and our region is going to get split every time when all of these colonial powers left. That's the same thing that happened in Lebanon. Lebanon is the result of the First World War and the creation of a French mandate in Lebanon. This is a segmented society. Why? Because if you look at history, Lebanon, like Israel, is the path that goes from along the Fertile Crescent. You go down towards Egypt. Egypt is very important because of the Nile. Up in the north, you have the Euphrates and the Tigris and so on. So it's a transitory place, and that's where the Phoenicians come from, which were a very, very strong power in antiquity. And since everybody's coming through there, you're going to have a creation of different ethnicities and different religions. Lebanon is built up with a few different religions. There's the Christians, there's the Sunni, there's the Shia, there's the Druze, there's the Cherkess, there's a whole bunch of different things. When the French leave, there's going to be a structure put into place where the president is from one group, the prime minister is from another group, the speaker of the house is from another group, and so on and so forth. But they left a very weak state. This weak state has been manipulated by everybody in the vicinity. Syria never accepted the creation of Lebanon because they just see that as part of Lebanon, just like they never accepted the creation of Jordan or Israel, because all of that was just southern Syria. Because Damascus has always been a very, very important place. And so they created a very weak structure. And the Lebanese state was manipulated by all of the states in the vicinity. But there was nobody. The Syrians for a while controlled Lebanon during the 70s, 80s, more or less. But they did that by brute force. Their army was there. Right? They had tanks in the streets. They controlled the place. That balance within Lebanon was disrupted after 1970. September 1970, you have what's called the Black September, where the Palestinians, the PLO, tried to take over Jordan. And King Hussein kicks them out. And Yasser Arafat, along with his cohorts, are sent up into Lebanon. This happens in 1970, more or less, the end of 1970. They're going to destabilize Lebanon because all of a sudden there's an influx of a very organized political power and people, and that's going to upset the balance within Lebanon. And there's going to start a civil war in 1975 in Lebanon. This civil war is going to spill over into Israel in 1982, and that's going to be the first Lebanese war. We are not fighting the Hezbollah, we're fighting the PLO. And the PLO is fighting Lebanon. Supposedly in the name of Lebanon, but fighting Lebanon. And so the war, the first Lebanese war, which I participated in already as a reservist, and this war, let's say the third Lebanese war, the enemy is different people. It's not the same group. That's number one. Number two, Israel and Lebanon, all they have is joint interests. The government of Lebanon understands this. The government of Lebanon is done with war. They're not interested in war. They don't want to invest their money in buying weapons from, or receiving weapons, I don't know, to get them or buy them from North Korea and from Russia and so on and so forth and China. What they want is they want to be what they were. They want to be the Paris of the Middle East. Without Hezbollah, Lebanon stands to benefit tremendously because Israel is a world leader in agriculture, which they need, water desalination, which they need, the development of the gas and so on, which is happening now. They could use our help, and if we could combine the Lebanese resources with the Israeli resources, which is Europe and Egypt are hungry for, then everybody would be very happy and make a lot of money and solve a whole bunch of different problems. And another issue that's a big issue in the Middle East is the distribution of the electrical grid, right? Because what most countries do is that if there's an overload over here, I can borrow stuff from over here, and there's a way of connecting these electrical grids, which we don't have right now. Everybody would benefit from it. It's only in everybody's benefit. But that's if you're looking at what you mentioned earlier, if you're looking at it from a transactional point of view. But if you're Hezbollah, you're not looking at it from, you're thinking of the Mahdi. You're thinking of the Messiah.
Yes.
And so that doesn't matter to me. And
Right.
all of these religions have an theology that says things are going to get much worse before they're going to get better. And so things are much worse, but that's cool because that's what's in the script. and we can benefit from it.
Right. And can I just, here pick your brains a little bit, because I mean that was a fascinating overview, Amos, of just how complex things are. And I'm glad you also mentioned the PLO factor there, because often when we're talking about the present times, we have a tendency to sort of, have sweeping generalizations about history. So thanks for putting that into perspective. I just want to understand a little bit. I'm totally with you when you say that there is a potential, a possibility, if you look at the state actors, to create win-win situations which are going to be the best interest of everybody. And that is precisely what explains why the Lebanese government has been trying to sort of distance itself, alienate itself from Hezbollah's extremely theological approach to martyrdom and basically whatever they're doing with it. However, we do also hear that Hezbollah today within Lebanon is a state within a state. How much would you agree, and how would you sort of analyze this, the supranational kind of a character that Hezbollah has gained, and can there anything be done about it, especially after years of Israelis' campaigns against them?
Yes. The short answer is yes. And it's very simple. Cut off the source of income. Hezbollah started out similar to Hamas and similar to many other organizations of this nature. They start out as a religious organization that provides for the poor, that provides food, that provides all kinds of basic needs, basic healthcare, and things like that. All this stuff costs money. The money has to come from someplace. If you take away the money, they can't do that. So through all of this, they managed to entrench themselves within society. And similar to what the Hamas does, right? The Hamas, every so often you'll hear about there's a terror attack, and then there's a 15-year-old kid who is captured trying to shoot at the Israelis. He's not a terrorist, but his family is hungry. And the Hamas came to him and said, "We'll give you $500. Go take this and shoot at the Israelis." Now the family has 10 kids, has 9 kids, has 8 kids. So this is something that the family might be willing to do in order to allow everybody else to survive. But the child, of course, is willing to do it. Okay, when I was 15, I thought I knew everything until I became 18. Then I knew everything. But a 15-year-old is a 15-year-old, and that's what they, and so on. So if it will take it's going to take a process of education and so on and so forth, and the Lebanese society is going to have to decide what the values are that they want. What is it? How do they want to live their lives? If I look at Lebanon prior to 1975, then it's very clear to me what it is that they want. They see themselves, but then, by the way, Lebanon was predominantly Christian. Now it is no longer predominantly Christian. But they saw themselves as a European outpost, an Eastern European outpost on the shores of the Eastern Mediterranean. That's what they saw themselves as, and that's how they behaved. They were discotheques. The most, I don't know, the thing that moved around the most in Beirut was those, they used to have those mirror balls in the discotheque that would move around on the city. That's what Lebanon looks like. People on the beach, and so cafes, and so on and so forth. Cafes with a Middle Eastern slant. Everybody's playing backgammon, right? So there's 2 separate things that has to happen. One of them is cut off the funding of Hezbollah. And the second thing that has to happen is build a new social contract for Lebanon. Lebanon needs to decide what's important for it and what's important for its citizens, and decide, what they're interested in doing. I would suggest to them that they don't decide that what they want to do is destroy the state of Israel, because that's not going to help work for them. They might as well just decide to move on and make themselves a good life.
Okay, valid point. Cut off the funding sources, and also that itself is a complicated process, because then there's also the advent of the crypto networks, and obviously so much more work then needs to be done by the Israeli side. And the second is to create, at least, argue for and create a new social contract. And I agree with both these points largely. But isn't time also a factor there, Amos? Because Bibi Netanyahu is going to be facing elections very soon, and these are going to be general elections. Now we know that they are going to happen sometime in autumn, and he basically started. I mean, I know when the initial part of the war, this particular 2026 war started, there was a bit of a surge in his popularity ratings, but then as the war has dragged on, the popularity ratings have plummeted, and the narrative of a total victory is still elusive. So. Maybe let's just zoom in a little bit on the upcoming elections, and of course we all understand why Bibi Netanyahu is sort of trying to double down on Lebanon. But then, how do you look at these equations? Because while what you mentioned might take longer, but how does that have an impact on Bibi's upcoming elections and his political career? Because he's also facing corruption and so on, isn't it?
Okay, so first of all, I want to say from the outset, I do not support Bibi Netanyahu, and my analysis is going to be in according to that. I will try to be as objective as I possibly can, um, because that's what your viewers should get, more than just my one-sided view of what's going on. So first of all, Israelis do not see this as a war of 2026. Israel sees this as a war of 2023. We're on the same wall. One of the joke with amongst us officers in the army is how many medals do we get at the end? Because we get combat medals, right? And so is it going to be one from 2023 until 2026, or there's going to be one for Gaza, one for Lebanon, one for the rising lion, and then the other lion, and whatever? You know, what is this? But we view this as one war. That's the way the Israeli society views that for numerous different reasons. Because let's say me, myself, I've been deployed to Gaza and I've been deployed to Lebanon, and then I've been back deployed to Gaza and then back deployed to Lebanon. So to me, it's just it's one war. That's going to be number one. Number two, just to make sure that nobody is under the impression that this war was started by Bibi for Bibi's own political advantage or whatever, because however convoluted way you would like to look at it. This war was started because the Hamas attacked Israel, carried out horrendous atrocities. They literally came to kill my daughter. My daughter lives in a different kibbutz down in the south, right next to Gaza, about 2 kilometers from Gaza, 2.5 kilometers. They came to kill my daughter, not as a metaphor. They had a map. And so that's the way. So this war was started because of that. The war expanded into everything else because Hamas is also funded by Iran, and the way they understand the Mukawama, the way they understand this resistance, it spread. That's going to be number one. Number two, let's say that there's within Israeli society, give or take, let's say there's 20% of the population which are anti-Bibi. It doesn't matter what he does. He can ride into Tel Aviv tomorrow on a unicorn and with leprechauns handing out pots of gold. They're still going to be against Bibi. Then there's, let's say, 20% plus minus who are for Bibi. It doesn't matter what he does. He can ride into Tel Aviv on dragons and burn everything that's along the way. And then there's everybody in the middle, which is the majority of society. And it's the majority of society that is paying a high price. I've been in the army for the past 2.5 years. I'm sitting in my son's house right now, and I've come to babysit. He's also an officer in the reserves in the army. And he has 3 little kids here. We had to postpone this till the kids went off to kindergarten. And besides that, my profession is a tour guide. I haven't guided tourists in 5 years because of Corona and now because of the war. There's no tourists. And so the centrist part of society, and that is the society that produces wealth here, and that is the part of society that serves in the army and is literally spending its blood to protect the country. They understand this war and the fight against Hezbollah, right, because specifically we're talking about Hezbollah, as a not exactly existential, because nobody thinks that Hezbollah can take over Israel, but as a fundamental issue of the security of the state of Israel, right? And the Hezbollah has been very busy, especially of late, of shooting at civilians. That's what the Hezbollah does. That's what Hamas does. Not only military targets. I'm a fair target. When I put on my uniform and I go out into the field, you're allowed to try to kill me. When I'm sitting eating ice cream with my grandson, that's a different story. You're not allowed to do that. And so, so that's another thing. From the point of view of politics, what has come into Israel, but it's not only Israel. I know a little bit about politics in India and Modi's operandus vivendi of how he does things. But we have a political system now, like in the States, which I know more about, and also in Europe, that is less looking for common issues and is more divided. Nobody believes, excuse me, not nobody. Of course, there's going to be people. The majority of the center of the populace don't believe in an absolute victory. Can't define an absolute victory, but will have red lines. So if you let's say if you ask me personally, Amos from Kibbutz Gezer, Bibi is put in a very difficult place because there are real threats against Israel. The Hezbollah, Israel, when you talk about Israel and Lebanon, Israel wants Lebanon. Israel is for Lebanon. And Lebanon, Lebanon is not that interested in destroying Israel for various different reasons, like because it's similar to what happened in September 70, right? When Arafat started fighting against King Hussein, Syria came down and was going to take over Jordan. And then Israel stopped Syria. Israel, for all of these little Arab countries, were a stabilizing factor in the Middle East. Doesn't matter what people think, but that's the reality of the politics of it. And so, but Hezbollah wants to wipe out Israel. It wants to kill everybody in Israel. That's a different story. And so everybody will be behind whatever government it is, more or less, that is going to make that so they won't be able to do that. I've been fighting for 50 years. I fought everybody. I fought the Egyptians, I fought the Lebanese, I fought the Jordanians, I fought the Syrians, I fought the Hamas, I fought the Hezbollah, I fought the PLO, everywhere you want. And I would like to think that nobody sends me out into the battlefields to kill and die for political reasons. There will be some politics involved, but basically it's military necessity. You're asking me to take people's lives, and you're asking me to give my life. Now that's my generation, but I already have my children who are doing the same thing. So I don't want to think in those terms, but I'm a realist. I understand that there's politics involved. And so, but I don't, so on one hand, Bibi has a problem. On the other hand, the question is how he's managing it. Now, managing a modern war on 8 fronts is not simple. And so, I don't know if I would say he did a good job or a bad job. I would say that he did basically a decent job from the point of view of managing the war. he did a horrendous job from the point of view of social cohesion. An horrendous job. He's got
Yeah.
the.
Why do you say
the-
that? When you say that he did a horrendous job in managing social cohesion, could you please also elaborate for the benefit of our understanding? Why do you say that?
Okay. Yesterday, I was still in the army, and I was talking to a fellow officer, and I said to him, the interesting thing about Israel is that you and I, he comes from a religious background. He grew up in a village and settlement in the West Bank someplace. He's religious, what we call national religious. I'm secular. I come from the left. He comes from the right. We argue about everything all the time. But there's one thing that we both agree, or maybe two things that we both agree upon. The first thing is that I understand that what he wants is for the best of the country. I just think he's mistaken in his way. He understands that what I want is for the best of the country. He just thinks that I'm, naive and stupid. Not stupid, but naive. And I don't understand it correctly. And then the other thing that we share from the point of view of values is values. Integrity, honesty, taking responsibility, all these different things that we as, I wouldn't even say as officers, I would just say as individuals in society, the society that we want to see, right? And so we're there. We both have been there. He's probably 10 years or 15 years my junior. I'm 68. So he's I don't know, 50 or something like that. But we're there together. And we'll argue, we'll debate, we'll discuss, we'll whatever. But then we'll go out and we'll do stuff together. We'll do whatever is necessary to do together. And I will have his back and he will have my back. And that's the only thing that we know. And that is despite the fact that this present government, in my personal opinion, I'm saying, so there'll be no misunderstanding, right? My understanding, I'm a kibbutznik. That means that I'm a socialist by and large, right? Unless we're not going to go into what that means exactly, but just so people understand, I'm on the center left of Israeli politics. The whole issue of, for example, the judicial reform that they're trying to pass through. Well, right now there's another law they're trying to pass through, is that the ultra-Orthodox will not need to serve in the army by law. Right now, it's not a law. They want to make it a law. But you're just taking me for 700 and something days. And he's going to, but they also don't work because they study. And so I'm paying for this. I'm giving you my blood. I'm sending you my children.
Yeah.
And all of this is being done. I don't think that Bibi, I have no question whatsoever that Bibi does not believe in this, but it is for his political benefit.
Yeah, right. I get that.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
all of this put together has created, and for example, there's these, I don't know if I would call them politicians or juvenile delinquents, but there's these young people, 20s, 30s, who are basically professional instigators, and they go out and they do things that he doesn't try to rein them in. And they do very provocative things. Right? They
Right.
block people's cars, they yell at them, they whatever. And they don't do that. Nobody stops that. And if I was the government, I would say, hey, calm down. We're now at war. We need everybody on the same page. Stop. You do not represent my ideas, and you do not represent what we are. Cut it out.
Right. But Amos, can I just sort of circle back and just sort of have a quick, remark from you on how do you see the war against Hezbollah then going? Do you think that this has some sort of shelf life, or do you think this is something which is in for the longer haul? And just as Israeli people, I mean, regardless of your political spectrum, you as a serving officer, your other, your friends who are doing the same, are just simply ready for it. I mean, whenever that comes, what is it like? I mean, do we expect timely conclusion to it, a culmination to it, or do you think this is just a political narrative and it's going to go on?
A few months ago, I was in Lebanon. I went to talk to a forward command post of a battalion, and there was a young female officer, about 25 years old, and she had really, really fancy nail polish, but really fancy nail polish, right? With colors and shiny little things and whatever. And I said to her, "What is this? You got dressed up for the war?" And she said, "No, I was at a wedding." I said, "Ah, congratulations. Who got married?" She said, "I got married." I said, "What do you mean you got married?" She said, "Yeah, I was married 2 weeks ago." I said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "There's a war." And I said, "There'll be a war afterwards. Go find your husband and go on a honeymoon." And she said, "No, my husband and I spoke about it, and we're going to wait till the end of the war." I said, "Where is your husband?" She said, "Oh, he's in the 188th, a different unit, and he's over there." And I said, "Go get your husband and go on a honeymoon." And she said, "No." And I said to her, "Listen, I am as a superior officer, as a father and as a grandfather, I'm telling you, get your husband of 2 weeks and go on a honeymoon." And she said, "No, there's a war." This is Israeli society. This other officer and me, we can argue about everything, but we'll be there and we will do what needs to be done. This young woman just got married. She's married for 2 weeks and she's in the field. So because Israel sees this as this war started again on October 23rd to 23. So Israel will do what needs to be done. That's Israeli society, number one. Number two, it depends on the outcome of the negotiations between Trump and Iran. Right now, the way Israeli public, and there's a lot of caricatures and things like that and memes and so on. Bibi is presented as being either Trump's poodle or Trump's footstool, right? But we know who's calling the shots, and it's not Bibi Netanyahu, and it's not the state of Israel, for numerous different reasons. In the end, what will happen to Hezbollah is going to be decided in Tehran, and it's not going to be decided in the Bekaa. Israel, if needed, and without having all kinds of American restraints, Israel will cross the Litani. It already crossed the Litani a little bit, and continue going until it's done. Until the fighting capacity. In the end, if you want to fight, there's things you need, right? You need bullets, you need machine guns, you need this, you need that, you need communications. All that we can take out.
Yeah.
And that's a possibility. This might have something to do, since with for India, from the point of view of India and the way the Indian military and political echelon plan war. And we know that's done because India has a large army and is upgrading it all the time. One of the things that needs to be taken into consideration is the chain of supply of spare parts. That's a very big issue, right? That's, for example, something that India and Israel could help each other with, right? Because in the end, there's an engine, and the engine needs a gasket, right?
No, you're right. Yeah, India and Israel defense ties have come a long way in a very short time, and that by itself, that's a topic that we could discuss at a different stage. That yes, of course, Israel has emerged as one of the most important defense partners and players in the Indian defense ecosystem, modernization and diversification. Just one thing I'm tempted to ask you, Amos, and you've been extremely generous with your time. I realize that since you've been constantly referring to how it was, because you've also fought the Hamas, for example. And we know that in Gaza, they I mean, at least for the foreseeable future, it looks as if Gaza has been turned into rubble. And what is happening on that front? I mean, do you think that right now for Israel, it is basically Hezbollah and that Hamas will take some time to come up, if at all? Or do you think that Hamas's question is settled?
No, Hamas question is not settled. The whole issue of the Mukawama, it's impossible to understand what's going on now. This is different than the war of 48. It's different from the war of 56. It's different from the war of 67. It's different of the war of 73. We beat the Soviet Union. And this is the height of the Cold War. So by the time we get to 73, up until then, the United States has an arms embargo. Your listeners might not know that everybody thinks that there's an unbreakable tie between Israel and the United States. Nonsense. There's an arms embargo. There's no such thing as an unbreakable tie in international politics. It doesn't exist. And so in 73, we're already flying Phantom jets, we have M16s, and we're driving patent tanks. Why? Because it's the Cold War. And if you want to understand anything that happens during that period of time, you have to understand the Cold War. It is impossible otherwise. Impossible. And so the same thing is going to happen over here with the Hamas and with the Hezbollah. There's larger things at play. So depending on how cynical you want to be, but there's Iran and the Mukawama, and that understanding of the way they understand the world and what has to happen. But then there's also this economic thing. Is it going to go this way, and then that's going to cut you guys out, or it's going to go this way, and then you guys are going to be in the center of it? So you have a political interest, and you have an economic interest. You meaning India, right? You have a political and economic interest. You're not going to do something about it? Of course you're going to do something about it. Because here you're going to make millions or trillions, and here you're not. And so, or you're going to have to realign India, which is also a possibility. And so,
Right.
do I think that the Hamas is over? No, the Hamas is not over as long as they can get money. If they can get money, and this money is Sunni money, so it comes from Qatar, millions and millions, scores of millions of dollars from Qatar and from private individuals, which is different than the Hezbollah.
Yeah. Of course, that's a Shia. Outfit.
Those guys are Shia, and they have a whole different story.
Yeah. Yeah, so I get that. Amos, I have to thank you for the time you took out for us and all the deep dive that you've taken me to with respect to understanding the undercurrents and also the various nuances within the Israeli society when it comes to, how we perceive your country being in a state of perpetual war, and despite the fact that, you could be coming from different political spectrum. So that has been very interesting. And thanks once again for helping us understand. And you were watching Worldview with Swasti, so stay tuned for yet another episode.